The hearing room fell silent the moment Jasmine Crockett picked up the folder. Kash Patel, sitting stiffly at the witness table, watched her without blinking. The smirk he had worn through most of the morning was gone. Across the room, cameras rolled, pens stopped scratching, and even the aides glanced up from their phones. "Mr. Patel," Crockett said calmly, holding the folder at chest height. "Before I begin, I want to be clear. I'm not interested in spin. I'm interested in truth." Patel adjusted his tie. "Of course, Congresswoman," he said. She opened the folder. "You've told this committee, under oath, that you never altered or influenced intelligence reports related to domestic threats while serving in the Department of Defense. Is that correct?" she asked. "That is correct," he replied. "Then perhaps you can explain this," she said. She held up a printed memo, angled it toward the cameras. "This is an internal DoD document dated January 5, 2021. It's a draft intelligence summary warning of potential coordinated violence at the Capitol. It originally included the phrase, likely to engage in coordinated violence. That phrase was removed. It now reads, potential concern." Crockett looked at Patel. "The change was made by your office. Your initials are on the approval line," she said. A pause. Patel didn't speak. "Do you deny signing off on this change?" she asked. He cleared his throat. "I don't recall that specific memo," he said. "That's interesting," Crockett said, pulling another document from the folder. "Because in this email thread, also dated January 5th, you personally instruct your staff to, quote, tone down language likely to be sensationalized by the press." She let that sit. "So again, Mr. Patel, are you still claiming you had no role in altering the language of that intelligence summary?" she asked. Patel shifted in his seat. "Congresswoman, editing language for clarity is not the same as altering intelligence," he said. Crockett didn't blink. "Clarity? Or cover up?" she asked. The room was still. "Let's move on," she said, placing the documents on the desk. "You've repeatedly claimed that you were not involved in back-channel communications regarding surveillance of U.S. citizens. Yet we have encrypted signal messages between you and two outside contractors discussing surveillance software purchases for domestic application," she said. Patel's jaw clenched. Crockett continued. "Would you like to explain why a senior DoD official was communicating with non-government actors about acquiring Pegasus-grade spyware capable of monitoring American cell phones without a warrant?" she asked. "I would need to see the context of those messages," Patel said. "I'm sure you would," Crockett said, sliding another printout forward. "But the context seems clear. In this message, you write, and I quote, 'We can spin it as anti-terror if needed, just need legal to stay quiet.'" Patel's mouth tightened. He looked toward the committee chair, but no help came. Crockett pressed on. "You were attempting to secure foreign-made surveillance software for use on American soil, coordinating with contractors who were never vetted, and discussing how to preempt legal objections. That's not national security, Mr. Patel. That's a blueprint for unconstitutional abuse," she said. "Those were exploratory conversations only," he muttered. "Exploratory? You signed a letter of intent," she said. Gasps from the gallery. Crockett leaned in. "Let's now talk about your time at the National Security Council. You've stated, both in public and under oath, that you had no knowledge of the back-channel communications between White House staff and foreign actors after the 2020 election," she said. Patel nodded. "Correct," he said. Crockett slid another document forward. "Then explain this memo. Sent from your NSC account on December 29, 2020. It outlines a plan to, quote, delay transition intelligence briefings to Biden team until legal review concludes," she said. Patel opened his mouth, but no words came. "The law is clear, Mr. Patel. Once the election was certified, obstruction of transition activities became a violation of the Presidential Transition Act. Your memo was dated 8 days after certification," she said. The silence was sharp. "So I ask again," Crockett said, her voice steady. "Did you obstruct transition briefings based on a political directive?" Patel's voice cracked. "I followed chain of command," he said. "Which chain? The one that ends with a coup?" she asked. The room erupted. The chairman banged the gavel for order. But there was no restoring it. Patel sat frozen. Jasmine Crockett leaned back in her chair. No further questions, for now, she said. The headlines would come later, but the damage was already done. Kash Patel, the once confident architect of back-channel strategy and classified maneuvering, now sat ashen-faced behind the witness table. The folder on Crockett's desk was still half full. "Let's revisit the Pegasus software," Crockett said. Her tone was calm. No raised voice. No performance. Just the same relentless precision. "You testified previously that you never advocated the use of foreign surveillance technology on American citizens," she said. "I did not," Patel replied. She opened a new file. "This is a budgetary proposal, signed and submitted by you to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, requesting emergency discretionary funds for external surveillance acquisition from non-domestic suppliers," she read aloud. Patel interjected. "That line item was mischaracterized." Crockett cut in. "Did you write it?" Patel hesitated. "Yes, but that's all I needed," she said. She continued, flipping pages as she spoke. "You also claimed, under oath, that you were unaware of any effort to delay law enforcement response on January 6th. He straightened in his seat. "That's correct." "Then explain this," she said, sliding another document forward. "This is a phone log," she said. "It shows a 14-minute call between you and a senior official in the Department of Homeland Security. That call began exactly 8 minutes after Capitol Police issued a request for federal assistance." Patel's voice was barely audible. "I don't recall the substance of that call." Crockett tapped the paper. "You told him, and I quote, 'Stand by. We don't want optics of military versus citizens.'" A long pause. "That wasn't about delaying," Patel said quietly. "That was about avoiding escalation." "But escalation happened," Crockett said. "While you waited for better optics, people breached the Capitol." She pulled out a still image taken from surveillance footage. It showed a rioter smashing a window with a police shield. "This is what your delay bought us," she said. Silence. "For a man who claims to defend national security," Crockett said, "you've repeatedly placed politics over protection." She let the line sit. Across the room, even Patel's allies were silent. "No further questions," she said. The chairman called a recess. The cameras kept rolling. Patel didn't move. The moment the committee reconvened, all eyes were on Jasmine Crockett. She didn't look at her notes. She didn't need to. "Mr. Patel," she began, her voice level, "you've also denied involvement in any effort to pressure Department of Justice officials to pursue claims of election fraud that had already been dismissed by the courts." Patel nodded. "That's correct," he said. Crockett lifted a new document. "This is a draft letter addressed to the acting attorney general," she said. "It's unsigned, but the metadata shows it originated from your office. The letter urges the DOJ to, quote, immediately announce an investigation into irregularities in swing state vote counts." Patel leaned forward. "That document was never sent." "But it was written," she said. "It was exploratory," he replied. "There's that word again," she said. "Exploratory. Like exploring the edges of legality." She walked to a large display board that had been wheeled into the hearing room. "This timeline," she said, pointing to a line of dates, "shows a sequence of communications between you and 3 individuals known to have coordinated post-election legal challenges. These calls occurred between November 9th and December 3rd. They were not logged officially. Yet we have private phone records showing the connections." She turned back to Patel. "Why were those calls hidden?" she asked. "They weren't hidden," he replied. "They were personal calls." "Conducted on government-issued phones?" she asked. He didn't respond. "And finally," Crockett said, retrieving a sealed envelope, "we have testimony, under oath, from a former DOJ official who claims you personally delivered a message from the White House, pressuring him to sign off on a public fraud investigation in Georgia." "That's false," Patel said quickly. "We'll see," Crockett replied. "Because that same official has also turned over handwritten notes from the meeting. One of those notes reads, 'KP says WH will deal with us if we don't act.'" "Pure hearsay," Patel said. "Or pure accountability," she countered. Patel looked visibly shaken. She closed the folder gently. "Mr. Patel, you've claimed to be a patriot," she said. "But every document, every testimony, Every word in this room points to a man who used his access not to defend democracy, but to delay, to manipulate, and to conceal. He stared back at her, his face unreadable. Crockett stood up. "This hearing isn't about revenge," she said. "It's about responsibility. And some responsibilities don't end when the administration does." She sat down. The silence stretched on. The hearing resumed after a short recess, but the mood had shifted. Reporters whispered in the gallery. The air was tighter, heavier. Jasmine Crockett didn't wait for the chairman to prompt her. "Mr. Patel," she said, her tone slightly sharper now. "We've covered your actions leading up to January 6th. Let's talk about what happened after." Patel looked up slowly. "Go ahead," he said. "You've stated repeatedly that you had no involvement in efforts to limit congressional oversight following the Capitol attack," she said. "I stand by that," he said. Crockett picked up another document. "This is a memo, timestamped January 9th, sent from your NSC credentials. It outlines a communications blackout for specific departments, limiting interagency sharing related to operational timelines from January 6th. Patel frowned. "I didn't author that memo, but it came from your login, and it contains phrasing nearly identical to previous documents you've acknowledged writing," she replied. "That could have been staff," he said. "You know how these systems work." She stared at him. "You want to blame staffers for a policy that effectively blocked Congress from accessing critical after-action reports." "I'm saying there could be more to the story," he said. "There always is with you," she said coldly. "Let's add another layer." She turned to the next page in her file. "We have email records between you and a private security firm dated January 11th. In them, you discuss alternative archiving solutions for sensitive comms, specifically naming encrypted flash drives and remote servers based overseas." Patel leaned back. "That had nothing to do with government data. Then why did you use your official email to send it?" she asked. He didn't answer. Crockett stepped around the desk and held up a redacted document. "This is a subpoenaed invoice from that same security firm," she said. "It includes a January 15th delivery receipt. A private courier. The destination, a P.O. box in Reston, Virginia, registered to an LLC traced back to your name." Patel said nothing. "Would you like to tell the committee what was in that delivery?" she asked. "I decline to speculate," he muttered. "I'm sure you do," she said. She paused. "Let the silence speak." "Mr. Patel, do you believe in consequences?" she asked. He raised his eyebrows slightly. "Excuse me." "Consequences," she repeated. "For officials who use power to hide things, to manipulate institutions, to silence oversight. I believe in due process," he said. "You're getting it," she replied. The cameras never stopped rolling. Kash Patel tried to sit still, but his fingers betrayed him, tapping out a subtle, erratic rhythm on the table. Jasmine Crockett had returned to her seat, her expression unreadable. She let the silence stretch just long enough to remind everyone that she controlled the tempo now. "Mr. Patel," she said quietly, "do you recall a man named Alex Thurwell?" Patel blinked. "No," he said. Crockett didn't respond. She picked up a new file, thicker than the others, and laid it flat. "Mr. Thurwell was a cybersecurity contractor, former NSA analyst. Left the agency in 2017. You wouldn't remember his name, but he remembered yours." Patel narrowed his eyes. "In fact," she continued, "he remembered being approached by a private intermediary in early 2021. That intermediary claimed to be working on behalf of senior national security figures seeking off-grid analytics support." Crockett paused, then added, "You were one of the names mentioned." "That's hearsay," Patel said. "No," Crockett said. "That's sworn testimony, under penalty of perjury." She slid a photograph across the table. It showed Patel in a parking garage in Arlington, Virginia, standing with a man whose face was blurred. The timestamp, February 4th, 2021, 3 weeks after the Capitol riot. "Mr. Thurwell gave us that image," she said, "along with chat logs, payment ledgers, and a copy of an encrypted data set you allegedly delivered in person." "I meet with a lot of people," Patel said stiffly. "Yes," Crockett said, "but not all of them are former intelligence officers with decryption rigs in their basements." The gallery stirred. Crockett leaned forward, speaking slowly now. That data set, she said, contained extracted email archives. It included comms from multiple senior Pentagon officials, some of whom testified before this committee, some of whom said they had nothing to hide. And yet, there their emails were, sitting in a private server in Northern Virginia. Patel opened his mouth, but Crockett raised a finger. Don't speak just yet. She pulled out a new chart, a flow diagram tracking data movement from government servers to a series of shell corporations and encrypted cloud accounts. Arrows traced the trail across multiple states and one offshore jurisdiction. This is what digital laundering looks like, she said. Metadata wiped, access logs erased, ownership obfuscated. But one name appeared consistently in access requests. She tapped it with her pen, K. Patel. A beat. You were building your own archive, she said. Your own shadow intelligence bank. A backup vault of leverage, emails, memos, briefings. All siphoned out after the transition. Just in case. Patel's lips parted, but no words came. Who were you protecting, Mr. Patel? Crockett asked. Or were you planning to sell it? That's ridiculous, he said. You said you believe in consequences, Crockett replied. Then let me offer one. She held up a thin envelope. This, she said, is a referral letter. It's already been delivered to the Department of Justice. It outlines potential violations of the Federal Records Act, the Espionage Act, and Section 1030 of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Murmurs rippled through the room. Patel paled. Federal crimes, she said, with penalties that include decades in prison. Still no response. Jasmine Crockett closed the file and folded her hands. I'm done with questions, she said. Now it's your turn. You can either clarify, or you can be subpoenaed again, with a very different tone, and possibly a very different venue. The chairman said nothing. No one did. Patel stared down at the table, visibly trembling. The hearing room didn't exhale. It just shifted. Kash Patel sat hunched slightly now, as if the weight of his own silence had begun to press down on his spine. Jasmine Crockett hadn't moved, hadn't raised her voice once. And yet the effect was total, like the oxygen had been drained from the building, and only she knew how to breathe. She turned to the chairman, not to ask for permission, but to signal she was about to continue. I want to enter several exhibits into the record, she said calmly. Exhibit H, a signed non-disclosure agreement between Mr. Patel and an organization known as Sovereign Strategies. A pack-in name, but functionally, a covert messaging operation used to distribute classified adjacent intel to media proxies. Patel shifted. That's political activity, not intelligence. No, she said. It was laundering. Of narrative, not money. You created talking points, seeded them through think tanks, cable contributors, and anonymous sources. And in return, Sovereign funneled donor funds back into entities tied to your post-government consulting firm. She held up another page. Exhibit I, banking records showing a series of transfers from Sovereign to a Delaware shell company known as East Pine Holdings. That company is listed as a partner to Iron Forge Global, a private firm you joined 6 months after leaving public service. Patel blinked rapidly. And just to tie it together, she added, Exhibit J, a calendar entry from your assistant's phone, scheduling a messaging war room on March 17th. The location, a townhouse owned by East Pine Holdings. The guest list included 6 former administration officials and 2 current defense contractors. She paused, then dropped the final document on the desk. And Exhibit K, a strategy memo prepared for that meeting, titled, Post-Election Battlefield, Narrative Survival. It outlines coordinated campaigns to discredit whistleblowers, intimidate inspectors general, and bury internal dissent within federal agencies. The room remained deadly quiet. Mr. Patel, she said, turning back to him. You weren't just playing defense. You were running an information insurgency. That's a political characterization, he said. Not a legal one. Then let's talk legality, Crockett replied. Because the committee has also obtained internal DoD procurement logs from late December 2020, showing a sudden spike in short-term contracts for data analysis, cloud migration, and signal monitoring services. She raised an eyebrow. All signed off by you. I was managing a chaotic transition, he said. You were building a private intelligence skeleton using public funds, she corrected. I reject that framing, he said. I bet you do, she said. Because if it's accurate, then we're no longer discussing procedural misconduct. We're discussing criminal conspiracy, coordinated abuse of authority, possibly sedition. A long, audible inhale from someone in the press row. Crockett folded her arms. You knew the clock was ticking, she said. You knew the power was shifting. And in those final weeks, you built yourself a nest of data, money, and plausible deniability. You didn't trust the next administration, and you didn't trust the public. So you hoarded control. You turned your clearance into a currency. Patel's voice was thin now. This is speculative fiction. No, Crockett said. This is a trail, and we're following it. She stood up, signaling the end of her questioning. But then she paused. One last look. And then the line, flat, brutal, unblinking. You built a shadow state, Mr. Patel. But now you live in the light. And just like that, the moment snapped. Not with shouting, not with applause, just with silence. And 1,000 stares. The committee chamber sat in stunned paralysis. Even the marble walls, once indifferent to the flow of hearings and half-truths, seemed to lean inward now, listening. Kash Patel no longer looked like a defiant former official. He looked like a man beginning to understand what history might do to him. Chairman Bell cleared his throat. Mr. Patel, he said, voice low and measured. You've been accused of serious abuses of public trust. Before we recess, is there anything you'd like to say for the record? Patel straightened his spine. His face was pale, but his jaw tightened. I've served this country in uniform and in policy roles, he said. Every action I took was in service of national security. Jasmine Crockett didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. Patel continued. I reject the implication that protecting America's interest constitutes conspiracy or misconduct. And I believe this committee has turned a political hearing into a personal inquisition. A few murmurs echoed across the room. Not support, just unease. Crockett leaned forward, almost imperceptibly. Protecting the nation, she said softly, by dismantling its systems from the inside. Patel turned sharply. That's not what I said. No, she said. But it's what you did. The silence returned like a verdict. Chairman Bell adjusted his microphone. Without objection, all exhibits entered by Congresswoman Crockett will be added to the official record. This committee will review them in closed session before deciding next steps. He gave Patel one final look, including possible referral to the Department of Justice. Patel said nothing. As the gavel struck wood, the press surged forward. Reporters swarmed the gallery doors, phones lit up, emails hit inboxes. But at the center of it all, Crockett remained seated, composed, still, quiet. Her assistant stepped forward. Should we go? Not yet, she said. She watched as Patel was ushered toward a private exit, flanked by staffers, legal counsel, and 3 aides who no longer made eye contact with him. The man who once bragged he could outmaneuver the deep state with a phone and a signal app now looked like he was searching for a fire escape no one had built. Outside, the headlines were already being written. Crockett exposes shadow network. Patel facing DOJ referral after explosive hearing. Hill staffers stunned by scope of allegations. But inside the building, a deeper tremor had begun. That night, leaked documents circulated among investigative journalists. Attorneys who once worked with Patel declined to comment. Former allies on cable news suddenly changed their booking schedules. And within 48 hours, 3 federal agencies received formal requests to preserve records related to Patel's communications, contracts, and digital access logs. The Justice Department issued a statement. We are reviewing the materials submitted by the Congressional Oversight Committee and will take appropriate action if warranted. They didn't deny it. They never do when they mean business. In her office, Jasmine Crockett stood alone with the windows open. Washington's night air drifted in, cooler now, cleaner. A call came through. Unknown number. She answered. A low voice on the other end. You didn't just pull a thread. You tore out the lining. She didn't respond. The voice continued. Others are watching. Quietly. Carefully. You've started something. Then the line went dead. She didn't flinch. Instead, she looked back at her desk, stacks of files, names, dates, metadata. Patel was the first, not the last. And on a legal pad in front of her, a single phrase underlined 3 times. Follow the breach. Because where there's breach, there's access. Where there's access, there's motive. And where there's motive, there's someone, somewhere, who thought they were untouchable. Until now.